Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody online. My name is Steve Daly, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Solutions for the Global Digital Transformation Group at New Era Technology. Welcome to our second webinar in our Copilot series. Today's topic is From Hype to Reality, Assessing Your Organization's Readiness for Copilot for Microsoft 365. For many organizations like yours, the lifting of the licensing and other restrictions for Copilot for Microsoft 365 opens the door to its use in 2024. While many organizations will be tempted to immediately jump in with a Copilot trial, digital workplace leaders must communicate the potential broader implications of that investment. Questions we've heard from our clients include, is the workforce ready for AI? And do we have effective ways to promote its use? And how do we know if this thing's even working or not? These are issues that multiple constituencies, the C-suite, line of business users, the IT organization, and lastly, the digital workplace team have to consider. We're at the start of the new era of computing, the era of everyday AI. Before we begin, I want to let everyone know that we have the Q&A tool open and moderated during this webinar. Please post your questions there and we will answer them as quickly as possible or address them at the end of the presentation. We're working on our backlog of topics in our Copilot webinar series and would love to hear from you about what you want to see in future webinar events. Please post your topic suggestion in the Q&A tool. If you'd like to speak with us about your Copilot or other artificial intelligence initiatives, again, please post in the QA tool and we'll follow up with you in person. Lastly, we're recording this webinar and it will be made available to you in a few days. Now I have the privilege of introducing our speaker, Lorena Lane. Lorena is a senior user experience consulting in our global digital transformation group. Her journey at New Era has spanned various domains, including healthcare, technology, and motorsports, where she helped reshape and optimize our clients' user experiences. Her commitment is to develop user experience and change management strategies that are not only bespoke to each of our clients' needs, but also elevate customer and employee experiences. This endeavor isn't about technical or temporary fixes. It's about collaborating with our clients to build strategies that resonate on a deeper level with users to support business objectives, to foster growth, and eventually to boost revenue, all around the idea of Copilot for Microsoft 365. Now I'll turn it over to Lorena. Lorena?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Today, we're going to go kind of fast and furious. There's a lot of ground to cover, and we're diving into the exciting and burgeoning world of generative AI with a particular focus on Copilot for Microsoft 365. Together, we're going to explore how Gen AI is expected to transform the economy, how it's changing the way we work with computers, what Copilot for Microsoft 365 can do for us, what we need to consider for our organizations before integrating this technology into our workflows, and how we can adopt Copilot for Microsoft 365 in a smart and effective way. So McKinsey's June 2023 report, which many of you may have seen, and there are other reports out there by other organizations, research organizations, indicates, and the report is called The Economic Potential of Generative AI, and it estimates that Gen AI could add $2.6 to $4.4 trillion annually to the global economy, with 75% of this value realized across areas such as customer operations, marketing and sales, software development, and research and development. To effectively leverage Gen AI, organizations must move beyond initial excitement and develop a comprehensive plan that ensures its integration enhances operational effectiveness and drives tangible outcomes. This requires assessing current capabilities, infrastructure readiness, and alignment of AI initiatives with strategic business objectives. So let's have an honest conversation today about how to skillfully prepare for, incorporate, and optimize Gen AI in ways that are truly beneficial and forward-thinking for our organizations. want to share this with you as a, sort of a core principle of what we're talking about today. This is from Jared Spataro, Corporate Vice President of Modern Work and Business Applications at Microsoft. And this is really what we're zeroing in on today's conversation. Becoming an AI-powered organization doesn't happen with the flip of a switch. Organizations that take a thoughtful and deliberate approach are going to be the ones to reap the benefits of AI. Now, some of the risks that are being identified early on here, and these are more, if I were to rename this, it would be the biggest perceived risks with deploying Copilot for Microsoft 365. But as you can see here on the chart, the top 3 risks would be oversharing and exposing sensitive information to employees, data being processed outside the organization by the LLM, and unclear use cases leading to poor adoption and ROI. And we'll get into a little bit further why, here in a little bit, why these concerns have risen to the surface. Now, I do want to touch a little bit on my experience, and we're going to lead into then covering some of the topics that I mentioned earlier. We're going to do an exploration of Copilot for Microsoft 365. It's a live demo, so hey, anything can happen, right? And so I've prepared some examples, and really what I'm sharing with you today is what have I learned so far? How am I integrating Copilot for Microsoft 365 into my workflows? And a key example here is, as a senior user experience consultant at New Era, I've been exploring Gen AI and its intersection with user experience, and that's a very interesting nexus or intersection to explore. I've been exploring various applications. Primarily, my go-to up until pretty recently has been ChatGPT, and many of you have already probably been exploring that as well. I've been exploring how I can leverage AI in my UX methodologies. I've been also exploring, many of our applications now have their own version of Gen AI plugins. And so those are some of the explorations I've been doing. But more recently, my focus has been around Copilot for Microsoft 365. And I'm really digging in and exploring from a user experience standpoint and from a super pragmatic workflow standpoint. What do I stand, or organizations or individuals in organizations stand to gain by using this integrated Copilot for Microsoft 365 Gen AI tool in my daily workflows? One big takeaway so far for me has been that we need to lean into, and I found this for myself, that I've had to lean into sort of this collaborative engagement with AI. Initially, I had this magical thinking going on that with the perfect prompt, I could come to some amazing outcomes if I just craft that perfect prompt. But what I'm really finding is that it's really about deep collaboration. I've sort of likened Gen AI to partnering with a super smart PhD, but maybe that doesn't have all the street smarts yet, right? And we know this technology is going to continue to improve. But really the main emphasis for me has been, deep collaboration through ongoing dialogue and moving beyond that magical thinking, and then finding that point of synergy between my human creativity, my human experience, and my human professional background and AI. So here's where I think Gen AI gets really interesting. I'm going to geek out a little bit here on human-computer interaction with you guys, but I think it's foundational to our understanding of why does this feel like such a big shift? What's all the hype? What's really happening here? And what's happening is that we're moving from just telling computers what to do to explaining what we want to achieve, kind of like how we interact with each other, right? This shift towards intent-based interactions with AI, where we outline the outcomes rather than the steps, is a big leap forward in making our work with technology feel more integrated and intuitive. Command-based interaction and intent-based outcome specification really represent 2 paradigms in the domain of Gen AI and human-computer interaction, or HCI. Both approaches facilitate communication between humans and computers, but they do differ significantly in their methodologies and user experiences. So for instance, command-based interaction is a more traditional form of HCI, where we provide explicit commands to the computer to perform specific tasks. It's what we're used to. And I think back to my junior high days when I was learning basic program on the TRS-80 computer, right? Literally, we press buttons and click keys to be able to command the computer. And so until now, many of us have only known this traditional and ubiquitous form of interacting with computers. So for instance, in software like Microsoft Office applications or design programs such as Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, you just think about any software application, and we've been using command-based interaction. So these interactions require some level of precision, they're menu-driven, and they're tool-specific commands. Users need to know which tool or function to select to achieve a desired outcome. So such as applying filters, changing layer properties, or formatting text. So the more skilled we are in using these tools or functions, the better outcomes we can achieve. The pros of command-based interactions are precise control over the actions performed by the computer and efficiency in execution once we as users are familiar with the commands. The cons are, or can be, steep learning curves for users unfamiliar with tools and or functions, and less accessibility to non-technical users who, frankly, might find the tools difficult to understand or remember. This is where the new paradigm steps in to help us. So intent-based outcome specification represents potentially more user-friendly approach to HCI, particularly within the context of generative AI. Instead of requiring us users to know specific commands, users or we express our intentions or desired outcomes in natural language, as we're used to communicating with one another, and through high-level directives. So the system then interprets our intentions using natural language processing, or NLP, and other AI techniques to generate our requested outcomes. So this approach is evident in conversational AI, voice assistants, and generative AI systems that help us produce text, images, code. We've all heard of them, right, by this point. And these are all based on our prompts. So the pros of this intent-based outcome specification include increased accessibility and intuitive usability for users, especially for those of us without technical expertise in a certain software application. It allows for more flexible and creative interactions, as the AI can then interpret our wide range of requests. The cons of intent-based outcome specification include the system's ability to correctly interpret it, and this is where it's challenging, and fulfill the user's intent. It can vary and it can lead to inconsistent results, which has been really what has informed, as I mentioned earlier, leaning into that collaboration, that ongoing dialogue. Much of that collaboration with AI that I've experienced is a result of being able to clearly convey my intention, and then for the AI to be able to translate that intention into something meaningful. So that's the crux of it, right? And so the shift from command-based interaction to intent-based outcome specification in HCI really does reflect this broader trend in technology towards making AI more accessible and user-friendly. So while command-based systems, again, prioritize our precision and control, intent-based systems focus on ease of use, accessibility, and enabling that more natural human-computer interaction. This evolution mirrors the development of AI technologies themselves, moving from rule-based systems to more sophisticated learning-based models that can understand and generate human-like responses. So what we're really looking at here is a transition that's not just about adopting emerging technologies, but also about evolving how we work, how we collaborate. So integrating tools like Copilot for Microsoft 365 opens doors to not just incremental improvements, but leaps in how we approach innovation, creativity, and productivity. We are truly at this moment on the leading edge of a future where our creativity is amplified by AI. Whether we love it or hate it, we've got a lot of opinions about it. I kind of go back and forth myself, but it is what it is, and it's really amazing in its ability to reshape what's possible in our workspaces. So let's lean in a little bit. We're going to dive into Copilot for Microsoft 365. And so now that we're grounded a bit in our understanding of this evolution and human-computer interaction, we're ready to explore the capabilities of Copilot for Microsoft 365. Let me give a little background here because many of you may have seen that there are various Copilots out there. There's this entire sort of more Microsoft Copilot ecosystem, and I think it can get pretty confusing pretty quickly without having some sort of an explanation for this ecosystem. What we're narrowing our conversation down here today is to the M365 Copilot that you see there highlighted in the blue square. But you can look beyond that. We will touch a little bit on the Copilots for web actually as well. But below in that bottom row, you can see the various Copilots that are out there for specific uses and business cases. And those are apart from, but integrated into this whole Copilot ecosystem. Okay, and actually, let's see, we're gonna dive into the demo, and I'm gonna start by showing you guys some screenshots here. So since we're running this webinar in Teams, it's very difficult for me to actually demonstrate in Teams what the capabilities are, but I'm gonna start here and show you guys, these are some screenshots I took from my phone. This is a feature that I'm really starting to use. So, you know, the mobile application in Teams allows me to, in that first box there, gives me some prompts, right? And so far what I've found from a user experience standpoint in all these applications is I'm loving the prompts. It really very quickly gives me an idea of what I can accomplish. So I don't feel hard pressed to come up with my own ideas of, you know, how I, you know, what kind of outcome I want here. And you'll see there, you know, prompt of like, what's new, what's, you know, what's the latest from a person that you can actually indicate and pull that up. You know, you can get a bullet list of key points and or you can jumpstart a draft. And so you'll see here in sequence, you know, I asked Copilot, what's the latest from my colleague Stephanie Brown, organized by emails, chats, and files. And then you'll see there in the third box here, the feedback actually sort of the state of system status where it's telling me that it's doing something has been also very, very good. So you can see there, it's sort of like this progress bar. It's saying, okay, I'll look for the latest from Stephanie Brown. And then the final box there, it's a screenshot of actually, you know, getting that information populated and the AI generating that information for me. And then if we look at the screen view here, this is in Teams, and these are some prompts. Also, what's new, get the gist. So very similar prompts. It just looks a bit different on mobile versus screen. And then we can go over here to you know, once you click on, oops, sorry, I'll go back here. Once you click on view prompts down here, it will bring this up. And then I tested out what's new from the latest person. So same sort of what we just looked at on mobile. I wanted to know what's new from Stephanie Brown. So selected that, it starts to populate it. And then over here, again, it gives me a nice status as it combs through documents and chats that it finds to be relevant. And then it populates that information. It also gives me a little history of my chats here. And then it actually even provides additional prompts so I could drill down even further into emails from Stephanie. Okay, so I do want to, I'm going to go ahead and exit this because I want to show you guys some live demos as well. So we're going to look at Outlook. So far, the top two use cases in Outlook for Copilot, or Copilot for Microsoft 365 and Outlook, relate to being able to summarize email threads. I think we all have these email threads. They can get pretty long. I will say I generated these email threads for today's purpose, and they just come from my Gmail account. But I can go up here and I can click Summarize. And you'll see it's giving me a good system status, and now it's generated this summary. So can very quickly begin to understand, you know, what's happening in this thread. Now, if I do want to reply, I can go over here and I can click Reply with Copilot. And here's where it gives me some ideas. Now, let's say I wanted to, I have to bump the meeting to next week. Bump the meeting to next week. And let's click, oh, and also, by the way, we have options. We can go direct, formal, neutral, casual, and in a more colorful world, make it a poem. But I'm going to click generate here. And again, really good system feedback status. And now it gives me an email reply. Thank you for adding the budget item into agenda. Appreciate. However, I have scheduling conflict for so on and so forth. All right. And then here's where you can choose to discard. You can regenerate, or you can use different options and try a different approach. And then you can click keep it and go ahead and send that email. So super quick, high level, Outlook utility here for Copilot. Now let's take a look at Word. Okay, so interestingly, I really, for today's webinar, I wanted to show you guys a realistic view of what's actually going on in Copilot. I've been running into some challenges, and there are known challenges. I went out into the user forums to see, who else is having these problems. And one of the problems that I'm running into right now, again, wanting to really show you guys a realistic view here of what's going on, is I've been running into challenges with the drafting the rewrites. And it does give me good system feedback. I kind of know something's going on, so I'm at least not stuck wondering, is anything happening? But one thing that I've been running into just yesterday and today has been that it's really struggling to do these rewrites. But there have been moments. Last week, I was using this pretty extensively to prepare, in fact, for this webinar, and I was getting very, very good results in rewrites. So one thing you might encounter is something went wrong. Please try again in a few minutes. But I do have a workaround for that. But before I show you that workaround, I want to show you over here, we've got the Copilot panel. You'll notice that there can be a slight delay in that panel getting fully on your screen. One thing that is really a helpful feature or a prompt that you can use, as you can imagine with long documents, you can summarize the document. And again, it's telling me what it's doing, it's working on it, it's pulling things together. And one thing I just really started recently doing too is I might just let this run and go do something else on my computer. I'm running two screens here. As you can see, I'm looking at the screen as we're demoing. So this can keep working on my behalf, and I can jump over to something else, or I can have multiple Word documents going through this process. So it really does have the potential to accelerate workflows and okay, I'm going to let that summarize, and then I'm going to come back to it and give it a little bit of time. But I'm anticipating that this is only going to get faster and more efficient. But as you can see here, we're getting a summary, main ideas, my background, some background on HCI that we talked about, and still finishing up. So again, realistically, from this demo standpoint, if you look down here, it's a pretty extensive document. Don't worry, I'm not reading all of these words to you guys today, but I did want to be able to show you, at least for a longer document, what that experience is like. Now let me pull up this other document. So this is a poem by William Wordsworth. And one experiment I was just very recently running is how good is Copilot at translating, or rewriting this type of a poem, because this language is a bit different from what we use today. So let's see if it still gets stuck. So I'm going to ask it to rewrite with Copilot. Finishing up, as we can see here. And now the good thing is that we do have an exit at any point in time. If it's taking what feels like too much time, or we're not getting the results that we want, we can always abandon and come back later. So this has been kind of, to be honest, a little bit of the frustrating piece of the puzzle. But this new technology, it offers any organizations that are beginning to adopt it. It offers us the opportunity to grow with the technology. So again, while this isn't working ideally right now for us, it holds tremendous potential, because I have had this work really well for me, again, in the past couple of weeks. So I haven't been able to figure out why sometimes it doesn't work. But I think, if anyone goes onto the forums and learns a little bit more about that, it's something that, is a known issue and is being worked on by Microsoft. Now, I will say, again, looking at the summarize feature, it does a very good job of translating this, poems can be very hard to interpret, which is why I selected it. But what I'd love is that it does a very decent job of summarizing the document. It talks about the poet's mood and thoughts, the connection between nature and the human soul, and the poet's faith and lament. All right, so what's my workaround? So in the past couple of weeks, when I have not had tremendous success because the system gets bogged down or whatever it is that's happening here. What I wanted to show you is here is the Copilot for Microsoft 365 web. I'll let you know I am logged in to my New Era account. So this is a protected environment. Some of the risks that I showed you earlier on that bar chart relate to the fact that the way Copilot for Microsoft 365 works is it's not like just Chat GPT like embedded into the Microsoft environment. It's different. This is where there really is a big difference. The big difference is that with Copilot for Microsoft 365, it's not only pulling in the features that we get from ChatGPT, from a large language model, right? But it's actually integrating and pulling from what's called the Microsoft Graph, which is based on an organization's tenant. And so what that means is that Copilot for Microsoft 365 is accessing the various documents, the various types of information inside of our organization's ecosystem. And that's why there are concerns around privacy, around data access. And that's why in a few minutes, we're going to talk about what are the key questions that organizations should be asking themselves before doing a Copilot for Microsoft 365 integration. And then we're going to walk through high level a framework that organizations can take in order to ensure that the data access and data governance is in place properly, and also that users are properly enabled around the use of Copilot for Microsoft 365. But back to my workaround here. So when I'm having a difficult time in Word, and again, sometimes it works amazingly, but I'm going to ask this to revise in a casual voice. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. And as you can see, it's thinking, got our nice 3 little dots here. And so this is a very casual voice, chilling in a grove. I heard a mix of sounds. My mood was sweet. My thoughts were profound. And again, how many of us are writing poetry at work? Probably not many of us, but this is just a real, friendly example of some of the capabilities around even just content revision. I've used this pretty extensively for helping to generate content. And so the capabilities so far from my standpoint have really been around, helping me get to content frameworks much quicker than I would be able to achieve on my own. Do want to show you Microsoft Excel. And again, I know we're kind of going through these pretty quickly and very high level, but here in Microsoft Excel. So there might be some of you, especially if you work in banking and finance, maybe you really know your way around Excel and you know how to work extensively with the various features. I mean, we've got a lot of buttons here, right? And I love a good spreadsheet, but I'm definitely not, your data analyst. And what I wanted to show you here is, and I thought this was really interesting because we do have the analyze data feature right here that gives us a lot of opportunity to, insert pivot charts and so on and so forth. But again, going back to command-based versus intent-based outcomes, and you'll notice here Copilot is in preview mode for Excel. So it's still, this is all still truly being built as we use it. And you'll see that there is a little bit of a lag here as it's loading. And let's see if it can go ahead and finish loading for us. Again, live demo. And so let's take a look here. Hopefully it'll load. This is just, we're going to look at this sheet here. So while many of you guys might know how to easily sort and filter, highlight, or add formula columns, or even analyze the data, for those of us who aren't as well versed in Excel, but we do want to do some data analysis, we can start to get closer to being able to do that by doing this, using Copilot and using the intent-based outcome mindset. And so right now it's taking a look at the data, taking a look at percentage of total sale price that comes from this year. It's analyzing the data. And again, what I'm finding is sometimes when it takes a little bit of time, I'm multitasking. And I know there's some opinions about true multitasking these days, but I'm not just sitting here waiting necessarily for these outcomes. I can do multiple things, as I go and then come back to this. And so here it gave this percentage. Now I can go ahead and add it to a new sheet and it's showing up here. So that was just another quick example. And then, okay, PowerPoint. So I'm going to bring my presentation over here. And oops, let's see here. Give me 1 second. Thanks for your patience. All right. Okay, here we go. All right, we got it. Okay, so while it has been known by many that you can export from a Word document to create a PowerPoint from that Word document, now we have this opportunity to do so right here embedded in Copilot for Microsoft 365. And what I think is really fantastic is just the ease of use, ease of finding how to do that. Not really, I mean, it's front and center. It's not, I don't have to know too much about the tool. And you'll see now it's pulling this this poem in. And I will say also that if you have an organization template, you can go ahead and have that template loaded here and it will load into that. And so now it's generating slides for each of these. And I do like that it gives us a percentage. I don't know how accurate that percentage is, but it is telling me that it's working and it's thinking. And again, I might take a minute to breathe while this is happening or go on and, check an email or whatever, especially since I'm on 2 screens, it helps to be able to do that. So let's see here. It's still continuing to generate. We can see here that it's identifying an outline for our presentation. Oh, and this is a great opportunity to actually tell you something very important. So because this is pulling from the Microsoft Graph, if you're a person that is saving documents onto your hard drive on your laptop, if your organization starts to, roll out Copilot for Microsoft 365, it's really important that you do save your documents in that Microsoft Graph. So whatever environment you have, they're making sure that users across your organization really are, if they want to leverage Copilot for Microsoft 365, it's critical and essential that that the users do save their documents in a way that is going to be able to be pulled. If it won't read documents on a hard drive or outside of the tenant, so that's why it's important. So now we have here an agenda. We've got, and what I think is very interesting about this too is it pulls in imagery that relates to what is being communicated, right? So nature, so on, bird image. So some pretty smart, integration of, actual images there that relate to the content. Okay, so that is, and I'm going to just go ahead and reset my stage here for you guys. Again, high level look at Microsoft, Copilot for Microsoft 365. Wanted to share with you today just a realistic view of what it's like. It's not a perfect demo. There are known challenges in the environment right now, and so that's why we need to get into sort of the why AI piece of the puzzle and really digging into assessing an organization's readiness for Copilot for Microsoft 365. These examples give us a glimpse of the capabilities. It also gives us a glimpse of some of the challenges. And again, organizations that begin to adopt these technologies and are sort of riding the peak of the Gen AI wave, so to speak, right now, for those organizations that do the proper enablement, that have the proper understanding, and that choose to grow with the technology in its nascent state, right, in its imperfect state, have a lot of opportunity for differentiation. But again, it's very important to pause before we get too excited about the possibilities and pause for a moment and ask ourselves this fundamental question of why AI? Why AI for my organization? This does represent a change in how we interact with technology. For those of us who are early adopters, how do we, handle some of the challenges in the environment? We're not getting the outcomes that we want right away. And how can we integrate this into our day-to-day tasks to be more intuitive and efficient? And so really it necessitates for us to consider what the risks are of not fully embracing or understanding how to use this type of advancement. So without proper enablement, users might find themselves struggling with, or even worse, sidelining Copilot after some unsuccessful attempts. This scenario underscores a critical challenge. It's the potential for significant investment in AI to yield minimal returns if not strategically integrated and adopted. And it brings us to the core of our discussion. It's essential to recognize that our engagement with AI, particularly like with tools for Copilot for Microsoft 365, should be driven by more than the appeal of cutting-edge technology. The decision to integrate AI into our workspace really does need to be anchored in a clear understanding of its potential to solve real problems, enhance operational efficiency, and foster innovation. So at a high level, as we think about integrating Copilot for Microsoft 365, it is first important to assess these three key areas. It really relates to organizational strategy, user enablement, and technical readiness. And by answering the question, how do we justify it, org leaders begin to examine what value this technology is expected to bring to the organization. By answering how do we secure it, organizations learn how to set up their IT infrastructure to ensure required data access and compliance practices are in place. And by answering how do we use it, organizations begin to examine how employees may use this technology to solve problems and/or accelerate their workflows and work outcomes. So let's dive deeper into the organizational strategy part. First, what are your reasons for considering implementing Copilot for Microsoft 365? And I'm going to add at this time within your organization. In other words, are we seeking to leverage AI to stay ahead of industry trends? Or are we reacting to the fear of falling behind, that FOMO, right? How do we differentiate between the hype and the genuine value that these technologies can bring to our specific business processes? So then business processes or functions, let's talk about those. Which business processes or functions are you prioritizing for improvement with Copilot for Microsoft 365 and why? So going back to that earlier quote, it's not about flipping a switch. It's about having real use cases to be able to identify across your organization and prioritizing those for improvement with Copilot for Microsoft 365. And then let's talk about commitment. What is your organization's level of commitment to continuous improvement regarding the use of Copilot for Microsoft 365? Again, leaning into the idea that this is nascent technology. And so as this technology continues to improve, what does that mean for your organization? And what is that level of commitment your organization has to improving along with the technology? And reflecting on these questions allows us to ensure that our move towards digital transformation is not just about keeping up with technological advances, but about strategically aligning these tools with our organization's objectives and values. So now let's talk about user enablement. So when we examine the organization's understanding around user enablement, here are some key questions around commitment. What is your organization's level of commitment to ensuring employees are effectively enabled in the use of Copilot for Microsoft 365? And this relates back also to setting the proper expectations. Again, we saw in the demo, sometimes the system is not responding the way that we want it to, but sometimes it responds amazingly. And so being able to set the proper expectations while this technology continues to improve is key, but also expectations around or setting, being committed around ongoing enablement for users. An excellent follow-up question to this is, how do you envision addressing different learning styles and technology comfort levels among your staff? We've all got super users and we've all got, other levels of users. So how do we ensure, widespread adoption and proficiency? And that leads us to training. What does your current training infrastructure look like? And how do you envision integrating Copilot for Microsoft 365 training into this framework? And then finally, measurement. How do you envision measuring the effectiveness of user enablement and training programs for Microsoft 365? Copilot for Microsoft 365. The next critical area is technical readiness. Some key questions to consider are around infrastructure. What known limitations or challenges with your current IT setup could impact the implementation? Data, how do you manage data security and compliance currently? And what specific concerns do you have regarding the integration of Copilot for Microsoft 365? And then finally, support. What are your expectations for ongoing technical support and maintenance post-implementation? And then finally, and very importantly, are the investment considerations. So organizations really must examine what cost or financial considerations may impact implementation or continuous improvement. How will you define and measure the return on investment for the Copilot for Microsoft 365 implementation? And then finally, what key performance indicators or KPIs are most important to your organization in evaluating and implementing ongoing success? So the journey to incorporating AI into a workplace is as much about people and processes as it is about technology. Now, let's take a look at a strategic framework for how to make this happen. At a high level, we are looking at responsible AI. What is a responsible way for our organizations to implement this type of technology? And so if we take a look at organizational strategy, it's leadership involvement. What is the organization's strategic vision? And really, again, identifying those specific business objectives, outcomes, and success measures. And then 2 work streams that run simultaneously. We've got user enablement work stream, where we prepare the organization and employees for the AI transformation journey, and that works in tandem in order to bring that maximum value and ROI, that technical readiness piece of the puzzle, addressing those technical deployment and optimization requirements. And the framework that we have established and that we are following and that we recommend for all organizations to follow really is in 4 steps. We've got an envision phase, an align phase, a launch phase, and an evolve phase. And what I want to do is give you guys a high-level overview of what this means and what this looks like. And you are welcome to screenshot any of this and really take it into your organization to start to apply it. So for the envision phase, we lead with education. Educating key stakeholders that are involved in the implementation itself around Copilot for Microsoft 365, ensuring that your organization, your decision makers and leaders that are driving forward the implementation are very grounded in the understanding of, responsible AI, how Copilot for Microsoft 365 pulls from the organization's data, so on and so forth. And then once that education is in place, then we can strategize and we can look at those business cases, the use cases, and then we can create plans around those strategies grounded in that education. Then for the alignment phase, again, another focus on education as we prepare to do organizational assessment, user experience assessment, and technology assessment in order to then prepare for launch. So again, educating ourselves, revisiting our strategy, revisiting our plan, conducting an assessment for the current state of our organization around user readiness and technology, and even those organizational data practices, and then doing the proper amount of preparation there. And then highly recommend a pilot period. So identifying sort of cross-functional teams in your organization to be able to run pilots as we're doing here at New Era Technology, and then learning from those pilots, and then using that information and doing pilot assessment in order to then prepare and then do a more full launch. And I will say you don't have to go from like pilot to preparation to launch. You can run multiple pilots across your organization depending on the size of your organization. And then finally, leaning into a continuous improvement mindset. As you can see here, we have monthly activities where it's ongoing gathering of feedback and reviewing metrics. Some quarterly activities that we recommend would be knowledge exchange, updating stakeholders, gathering strategic input. And then biannual activities could be auditing the user experience and making sure that you're maintaining strategic alignment and adapting usage around that. And then finally, annually, reviewing the entire Microsoft Copilot ecosystem, evaluating new technology trends. What is new? What are the new use cases and the business value? All right, so got through a lot of information here. I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to have some back and forth, some discussion through the Q&A. But I do want to say that, you know, Copilot for Microsoft 365 that offers a transformative potential that, when embraced thoughtfully, can redefine the way we work, collaborate, and innovate. We have an amazing opportunity here. And now I invite you to, you know, share your thoughts in the QA, and we'll do our very best to answer. And just thank you so much for being here today, and really appreciate your participation. All right. Stephanie.
Hello. Yeah.
Yep. Great. So Stephanie, will you be leading us through some questions? Is that correct?
Yes, I can do that. So Steve has been in the chat answering some of them.
Great. Yeah,
Yes.
whoever wants to jump in.
Yep. So I will read the first one that popped up he has not read yet. So what departments are most interested in using Copilot?
Okay. So when we look at some data, so let me go back over. Are we, Stephanie, to clarify, are we asking this to our users, or are we answering this question here today?
Just answering it
Okay.
for what, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I want to go back to this slide here. So this again came from a McKinsey report back in June. And what they identified, now this is just 4 examples, right? But around customer operations, marketing and sales, software development, and research and development. I can speak to marketing and sales. As you know, Stephanie, you and I have been collaborating as we've been preparing for this webinar, right? And being able to generate content very rapidly in some very strong frameworks with specific voice and tone, I think has been very, very effective. When I think about research and development, I think there's a tremendous amount of application around healthcare. If you dig into the information and the data that's being generated right now, from a user experience research standpoint, I do a lot of qualitative and quantitative evaluations. Right, I go in and I interview people and get insights from them. And primarily up until now, I've been leveraging ChatGPT for doing some of this analysis around, you know, qualitative insights that we need to gain for our clients. However, I will say that I'm now starting to see how I can leverage Copilot, particularly in Copilot for Web, for doing that analysis. And I do like that, you know, whereas in ChatGPT, we can have our protected accounts by, you know, having a team or an enterprise plan. What I'm seeing the potential value in is that my research documents, my resources are in our Microsoft tenant, and I'll be able to pull directly from those. And I'm hypothesizing that I'll be able to do more thorough analysis, such as sentiment analysis and other type forms of analysis within the Copilot for Microsoft 365 environment. Hopefully that answers some questions.
Yeah, the next question is, how do you see Copilot accelerating your workflows?
Yeah, okay. So as you can see today, there are still some challenges with Copilot for Microsoft 365 when we run into this kind of try again, right? But I can speak to how it's accelerated my workflow so far. So for instance, this is just one use case, preparing for this webinar today. You saw the size of the script, right? I think over 7,000 words as I sort of prepared the narrative for today. Of course, I didn't read from that script entirely. It was more or less like, what's our narrative? What are we speaking to today? Now, I didn't come up with all of that myself. I partnered in deep partnership with ChatGPT and Copilot for Microsoft 365. And the way I accelerated my workflows was, in this case, I collaborated first with ChatGPT in our protected environment. I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to communicate. I had some initial starting points and started generating content from there. I knew what I wanted to pull in terms of like this kind of data point, so on and so forth. Then what I ran into though, and I think something that I'm finding is challenging in ChatGPT is the voice that was coming out. It was using mixed metaphors and it was a bit challenging and it was going to take quite a bit of editing. So what I did is I copied that over into Word, and on that day it was working fabulously and was able to use the revise or rewrite feature. And what I found is that I was getting much closer to the voice that I wanted to use in communicating with you all today versus what was being provided to me through ChatGPT. And I can really see in the very near future that I was messaging a colleague about this the other day, that I'm seeing a future where maybe I'm not relying on ChatGPT at all, and that I'm working within, the Copilot environment specifically, because I think I am finding that it's accelerating my workflows, getting to my tone of voice much quicker, so on and so forth. So hopefully that's one example, and I think there are many growing examples out there.
Next question that I think we've gotten a lot is in terms of developing all this content and talking about Copilot. So, in your opinion, Lorena, do you think people should start Copilot now, or should they wait a few months for it to mature? What are your thoughts there?
That's a really good question. And Stephanie, we had a great conversation about this the other day, didn't we? When you look at Gartner's hype cycle, for anyone that is familiar with that hype cycle, right now, Gen AI is indicated, well, this was as of 2023, I think in June or something like that. Gen AI is at that top of the hype cycle, right? And feel free to look up, hype cycle 2023. It's a fascinating chart. I wish I had it handy right now for you guys. And what we were talking about the other day internally is like, what does this mean for people who are ready to, explore adopting Copilot for Microsoft 365, including, frankly, our organization? We're learning as we go here as well. And I think the key is, how do you avoid the drop into what's called the trough of disillusionment, right? There's like a 2 to 5 year, I think it's 2 to 4, 2 to 5 year span that's being predicted where we get into what's called the plateau of productivity with new technology. What I think that indicates for organizations is that for those of us who are adopting now at this peak, at the peak of the hype cycle, that as long as we thoughtfully integrate it into our workspaces and, going over those questions we went to today, that wasn't just made up for this webinar, right? Like, this is actually how we're moving forward internally as an organization, but with our clients. These are the conversations we're having up front. So my answer would be, it depends. If you as an organization can answer these questions, and by the way, actually, we have those questions we have a landing page for that. So if you didn't jot down those questions or, don't want to go back through and review this, go onto the landing page. I think, Stephanie, you'll be sending that out today. Is that correct? Or sometime soon. So yep. Participants will get a link to that. Take those questions, make them your own in your organization. And when you answer those questions, that can mitigate, right? So this wave that drops off and goes into this like plateau of productivity, what can you do to level that out? And that's really, frankly, what we're here for, to help you mitigate for those challenges. I think organizations that do decide to go ahead and move forward with adoption, and many organizations are. By handling the integration in that strategic way and following, and I'm not saying you have to follow our strategic framework, right? There are strategic frameworks out there, but what I'm encouraging you to do is follow a strategic framework, have conversations around what does a strategic integration of this nascent technology look like for our organization. And I'm hypothesizing that organizations that follow a strategic framework, that take that thoughtful approach, don't just flip the switch, right? But run that organizational readiness, the user enablement readiness, and the technical readiness work streams, then you stand to gain through improved workflows, accelerated workflows, and then also, some differentiation there in the market. Anything else?
Yes, another good question is next steps, right? A lot of people are, great, let's implement Copilot. What do you think the next step should be in terms of implementing it, deciding if they're ready? Obviously you discussed why AI, thinking deeper about that. Is there any other, thoughts into regards to, again, next steps?
Yeah. Again, leaning into asking those thoughtful questions, understanding that this technology in its nascent form is not perfect, but understanding what about this technology can really help with your specific use cases. So I think a really great starting point, again, is the questions we walk through, and being able to identify your organization. Why are we looking at this? Let's pause. There's a lot of hype around this. What is realistic for our organization? Again, starting with those questions, I think another really great place to start is, what are our use cases? What are our business goals? Who are the people in our organization that stand to benefit the most up front? What are those I like to call them high value use cases for your organization? So getting into the details and really avoiding that flipping the switch mentality, but asking those questions, and then taking a look at a strategic framework like the one I shared with you today is, what does a strategic approach to integration look like for us? And I will say that it doesn't have to take a huge amount of time, right? We've got, this framework approach. And I think looking for someone to come alongside you, someone like, our team here at New Era Technology, to come alongside your organization and be able to, really tailor that framework to the size of your organization and your timelines, but making sure that your people and your organization are grounded in, understanding and education, and that there are true specific use cases and business value for your organization, and we can help you understand what those are. So I think just really more deeply exploring first internally as an organization, taking those questions to other stakeholders in your organization, starting to answer those questions, and then getting support from a organization like New Era that can come alongside you and really start to help you discover what the potential is there. So hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, last question. And this is kind of intros our next topic for Copilot, the Master Copilot series. But and what you can answer, Lorena, can you put guardrails on Copilot to stop users from loading sensitive company data? The security mindset around Copilot.
Yeah, well, that's why we have the technical readiness work stream, and that's really important. Let me actually bring it up here. So when we talked about responsible AI, I want to go back to this model here. For an organization, again, leaning into it's not just flipping a switch on, that technical readiness piece of the puzzle, it does require addressing technical deployment and optimization. It's about governance, about security and compliance and management. Starting with, what are your organization's data policies right now? So I mentioned earlier, not so much from a security standpoint, but from a user experience standpoint, is your organization, are the people in your organization very consistently saving files where they need to be saved, right? And then going through, and this is more on the technical side, and I will be upfront with you here that I'm more on the organizational strategy and user enablement. I have colleagues who are really they are immersed in the technical readiness piece. But from what I've learned is that, the technical readiness piece of the puzzle, it requires some understanding of the current state around governance and data access policies, and then making adjustments in the back end in your there's a Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 dashboard and access area where you can go in and make some adjustments there, so that and following a policy where there's users only see the records, the documents that they have that they should have access, really establishing for your organization. And many organizations, frankly, already have this in place. It's just a matter of validating, your current data access practices. Are they what they need to be? Do they need some fine tuning? And just taking time up front, and doesn't have to take a whole lot of time with, expertise, being able to set those proper controls so that then your people within your organization, their data is protected. If you do research, or are involved in healthcare, there's definitely, controls you can put in place there, and all of that being part of that responsible AI piece of the puzzle. So, so in short, that can be addressed, and I would say that it's important to have some partnership with people who know how to set this up. But for those of you in the technical arenas, I'm not picking up that this is something that's like a massive overhaul of anything, that there are some, some features there in the back end for IT admins to be able to help ensure that the proper data access controls are in place.
Awesome.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lorena. We are now at time. I just thank you for this presentation. It was amazing. As Steve said earlier, and as Lorena mentioned, all of this will be sent to you guys. The recording will be immediately sent over. We all have some emails with more resources regarding Copilot, updates on the next webinar in the series, and be on the lookout. We're going to send out a survey on how we did, and also a survey on helping you guys determine your next steps of if you're really ready for Copilot and AI. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you again, Lorena and Steve.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you guys for being here.